There are thousands upon thousands of different games to play these days. Want something with a challenge? What if we make it more RPG focused? How about an FPS game? Maybe something less PvP focused? How about a platformer? A 3D platformer? There's so many options nowadays that choosing just one specific game to spend your time on can be difficult. I'm sure a lot of you have a ton of games sitting in your backlog that you haven't even touched, and trust me, I'm in that same boat. So why, out of all of these many different games, do I choose to play Sonic games? Out of the countless different options that I have available to me, what makes Sonic games so appealing? Well, today, I'm going to go over the different parts of Sonic games that I believe will help to answer that question. But to be honest, I can't really provide a definitive answer to this question for everyone because, well, it's all just subjective. Everyone has different tastes when it comes to games, so your answer could be completely different to mine, and that's perfectly okay. But in this video, I'm hoping to outline what I think makes Sonic games so appealing to me and so many other people. So before I completely jump into things, I think it's important to lay out the three main categories. Now these are going to be pretty generalized categories, but I'll be going into each one in more detail. The first one is, of course, the gameplay itself. Every game has gameplay, that's kind of the point. So what parts of Sonic gameplay make it unique and interesting to someone like me? Well, to start us off, you can't overlook the sense of speed that you get when playing a Sonic game. That's like basically the whole point. Well, most of the time anyways. But there's no glossing over just how important going fast is in a Sonic game. Sonic games started out as 2D platformers, then gradually shifted into 3D platformers, and then onto a mix of both. At their core, the mainline Sonic games are about going as fast as you can, so that you can beat the levels as fast as possible. Now a good Sonic game will provide you with the moveset, controls, and level design to do so, but sometimes those aspects can get lost during development.
Green Hill's looking a lot more like Sand Hill right now.
But anyways, good Sonic levels let you go fast. That's the aim of the game. You get to the goal by platforming through the levels as quickly as you can. But many games are played with the intention of speedrunning in mind. Almost every game in existence has some sort of speedrunning community. So once again, what's so special about Sonic levels? Well, to go even deeper than just going fast, we need to take a look at what kinds of gameplay styles Sonic has had over the years. The first one to look at is momentum-based 2D platforming, the classic Sonic formula. This gameplay style was unique when it first came out because there really wasn't anything else like it. Your main goal is still to beat the levels fast, but in these games you do it by maintaining your speed through knowledge of the level and keeping your momentum going to go as fast as possible. This style lets you memorize specific pieces of levels so that you can make use of the tools given to you, like the spin dash, or more recently added drop dash, to blast through zones. It's still a 2D platformer, but with the addition of speed that you're able to abuse in fun and unique ways. Now we move on to the adventure style of gameplay. This is stuff like SA1 and 2 obviously, Sonic Heroes, and even something like Sonic 06. This gameplay style probably has the most variety in it, simply due to the quality of the levels, but also because of the way the controls work. In games like Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, the character controller is generally pretty good, and the level designs complement the controls very well. You can pretty easily get a feel for how the game controls after the first level. Now something like Sonic Heroes on the other hand, while unique in its own right, has a different approach to this style, because you're constantly swapping between different characters, all of which have different controls and do different things. Now neither of these are inherently bad, they're just different ways of going about controlling a Sonic character in 3D. Again, subjectivity here is important when going over why you might like something. So does this classical 3D adventure gameplay style still let you go fast? Well, yeah. Again, at their core, these games are 3D platformers, but they still do exactly what the 2D games did by giving you movesets and tools to blast through these levels as fast as possible. The spin dash in SA1 is a great example of this. Sure, it's a little broken in terms of its power, but it sure does let you go fast, and do things you wouldn't be able to without it. I think a game that fails to really capitalize on this speed, despite using this formula, is Sonic 06. The levels themselves can be fun, I'm not saying it's fundamentally bad, that discussion can be a different video, but you never really go fast in Sonic 06. Sure, you still want to beat the levels as fast as possible, but there's no good spin dash techniques or level designs that let you abuse momentum to beat the levels faster. I mean, have you seen how fast Shadow moves in this game? So that's why I think this style of Sonic gameplay has the most variety, because depending on how your characters control and how good your level design is, you can get some wildly different results. But now it's time for the final main gameplay style that Sonic has, the boost formula. Everyone knows it, everyone has their hot takes on it, but if there's one thing that it has going for it, it's that you definitely get to go fast. The boost formula's results can also vary quite a bit depending on the level design, but not nearly as much as the adventure style in my opinion. I still love it though. The boost formula has a ton of potential when it comes to speed, although almost all of it is entirely dependent on the level design. Games like Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Generations have great level design that requires quick reaction-based platforming in order for you to maintain your speed. It has that same feel that the classic games do, where you don't want to lose your momentum in the level, or in this case the most optimal boost path, so you need to have fast reactions and good platforming skills in order to keep yourself from slowing down. But if we're talking about the boost formula, then we can't ignore Sonic Forces either. Now there's a million different videos already as to why this game isn't very good, and the Sonic community as a whole has been traumatized into thinking every new Sonic game has Forces-like level design. So why is that? Well, it's one key word: automation. Forces is a game that basically plays itself half the time, which means there's not much room for quick reaction-based platforming when only 1/3 of the game is modern Sonic, and also you can beat it in less than 2 hours. Sure, you can still go fast in Sonic Forces, but it's so easy to do so that devoting basically any time to getting better at it is pretty much an unnecessary waste of time. So how does all that factor into the boost formula? Is it bad then? Well, no, not at all. Some of the best Sonic games have come from the boost formula because it combines that 3D/2D platforming that you love with going as fast as possible, the core of Sonic. Sure, getting that speed is pretty easy, but it's less about that and more about staying fast, just like all the rest. But what about the Sonic games that don't fall into any of those categories? Something like Secret Rings, for example. Well, I don't know what to tell you there. Sometimes the Sonic series does some weird stuff. And experimentation can be good, I'm all here for it, but I'm gonna try and keep this video focused on the mainline games here, just because it's less complicated that way. So with all that being said, the gameplay is an extremely important part of Sonic games. You can do a lot of different things with it, as we've seen over the years, but at their cores, these games are about going as fast as possible, by utilizing the tools given to you, moving throughout the levels, and platforming in ways that are unique to Sonic. And that's a really generalized way of saying it. You could go way deeper into every individual Sonic game and pick out exactly what makes it unique, but as a whole, Sonic games are about controls, level design, speed, and maintaining that while going as fast as possible. Now onto the second main category that I think is very important, the stories within these games. I've seen people say that Sonic games shouldn't have stories, or that they were never good, but I just can't agree with either of those statements. Some of the best moments in any Sonic games happen because of the stories. Sure, some of the older games haven't aged as well, which can impact the immersion of their stories, but at the end of the day, a lot of Sonic games are known for their epic story moments and huge set pieces. Angel Island in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the arc from Sonic Adventure 2, the entire planet in Sonic Unleashed. These things just wouldn't have been as cool as they were without the stories that surround them. Sonic and the Black Knight takes place entirely within a storybook. Story is literally in the name, and this is a game that most people consider to be the peak of Sonic's character. You don't see anyone talking about how great Sonic was in Colors or Generations, and while those games do have the gameplay aspect down that I just went over, sometimes a Sonic game can be remembered for having a great story, which can also make it appealing to those who really want a good story to dive into. I mentioned Sonic Adventure 2 earlier, and I think that game specifically is a great example of combining story with gameplay, hence why it's remembered so fondly in almost every Sonic fan's eyes. Chances are that even if you don't care too much for SA2's gameplay, you probably enjoy the story, at least a little bit. Even if it wasn't from directly playing the game, but maybe it was another adaptation of it like Sonic X. There are a lot of story games out there, but that doesn't mean that Sonic games should be left out of having good stories. Even if gameplay is the primary focus, which I do ultimately think it should be, a great story can very easily enhance a game by just having one. I hate to pick on Generations again, but that game has a really interesting premise and setup, yet pretty much nothing comes from it after the first cutscene. The story is just the gameplay itself, and the very sporadic, nothing cutscenes. For a game that was celebrating Sonic's history for his 20th anniversary, they really didn't capitalize on the fact that his games have some very memorable stories. Even Sonic Colors at least has something going on, although the dialogue is, well...
Nose hair.
Baldy nose hair!
But that's actually another thing that can impact someone's enjoyment of a game's story as well, the dialogue. Sonic Adventure 2's presentation was a huge step up from Sonic Adventure 1 in terms of just about everything, but something that you notice right away is just how much better the dialogue and voice acting are, because they were actually given proper voice direction and scripts in that game. Again, still not perfect.
You're not even good enough to be my
those words!
But a massive improvement in just a single game. The cutscenes and pacing are also a whole lot better, something that I think kept improving in the series up until Sonic and the Black Knight, until they eventually went to using really cheap and lifeless animations in their cutscenes. Every single time I see the opening to Sonic Unleashed, I just can't help but get extremely hyped and end up watching the whole 6 minutes. It's the best Sonic cutscene in my opinion, and it sets up the entire story of the game perfectly. I could go on and on, listing all my favorite moments from the stories within Sonic games, but I think I should probably move on to my last main point, which kinda merges these first two things together: the characters. It's obvious that Sonic characters are a huge part of why people love this franchise, and especially Sonic games. Sonic initially stood out because he was something different from Mario. He was cool, unique, and of course, fast. His character alone is enough to drive the story forward in some Sonic games, but he couldn't do it without his main enemy, Dr. Eggman. Now, Dr. Eggman either ranges from being a hilariously stupid goofball to a genuinely terrifying threat to the whole of Sonic's world. Eggman is a great villain because he's able to fit into so many different stories, tones, and scenarios. Capturing animals and turning them into robots? Of course, that's a classic Eggman thing to do. Summoning ancient monsters to try and destroy the world so he can build his empire on top of the ruins? He's done it many times before. Hosting an entire racing tournament just so he can get a magic carpet? Yeah, that's certainly something. Trust me, if there's a semi-evil plan that you can think of, Dr. Eggman has probably done it, or at least thought about it. And we can't talk about Sonic characters without going over the hugely expansive roster of characters that have come from all the games. Tails is able to fly, he's been Sonic's main pal since Sonic 2, and he's an overall great character. Knuckles has been a particularly interesting one, given his status as the last Echidna. Amy is someone who can be obsessive over Sonic at times, yet she still knows how to be helpful, and is able to carry out things on her own when the time is right. Shadow, do I really even need to say it? He's become the most popular Sonic character right next to Sonic himself, even getting his own game. There's a ton of reasons why people love him, and there are just so many more that I could talk about, but I already have an entire tier list video on over 50 of them, so you can go watch that if you want to hear more of my thoughts on them. The characters in Sonic games also offer a lot of variety when it comes to gameplay styles, since they're usually all each given their own unique set of abilities, which can be annoying at some times, and other times they're really fun to play as. A lot of them are at their best when they don't detract too heavily from Sonic's main gameplay style, but sometimes you can have something wildly different and it's not too bad. Sonic Heroes is a game that takes its 12 characters and categorizes them as either speed, power, or flying types, and you switch between each one depending on whatever team you're playing as. It offers a lot of variety mid-gameplay, and you can choose who you want to prioritize playing as when you aren't required to use a specific type of character. Sonic games wouldn't be what they are today without the huge amount of characters present within them. Sometimes they're one-off story characters, and other times you're able to play as these mainstay characters, making for an appealing, or sometimes not, experience when playing Sonic games. And while yes, most of the time I'm playing Sonic games to play as Sonic, sometimes you just want to dive into a character's story and gameplay, especially when they're done well. So why do people choose to play Sonic games over any other game? There's thousands out there, so what is it about Sonic that makes it appealing to people? Well, I just listed out my personal reasons for why that might be, but at the end of the day, it's really all just subjective. Some people prefer playing games like Mario, or Final Fantasy, or even Fortnite. But for some people, Sonic games just scratch that perfect itch for them. And also, a lot of people aren't exclusively playing Sonic games either. Thank God there isn't a live service cash grab Sonic game yet stealing everyone's time. And I say yet because the Chow Garden is right there, and I could totally see it becoming something like that. But if you're into Sonic games, chances are you also play some other platformers too, like Mario, or maybe a completely different game genre entirely. That's the beauty of video games. There are so many different options to choose from, and Sonic games are just one of those many options, which just click right with fans of the series. The high-speed action, epic story moments, and amazing characters all make Sonic unique. Plenty of games exist outside of Sonic, but I think it's a testament to Sonic's legacy that he's managed to stick around for over 30 years now, and his games are the biggest part of that legacy. Just remember, it's all subjective. You enjoy what you want to enjoy. But while you're doing that, I'm gonna load up some Sonic Unleashed and S-Rank Jungle Joyride. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and maybe even consider subscribing if you love Sonic games, because I certainly do, and I'll be uploading many more Sonic videos in the future. Have fun with your video games, that's what they're here for, and as always, I'll see you next time.